we have over 3,000 stake pool operators, and it's one of the most decentralized networks in the entire cryptocurrency space. We had back in 2020, there was the ITN, the Incentivized Testnet, and we created a whole bunch of pioneers as an ecosystem. And those 1,000 stake pools rolled over. Now we have over 3,000 stake pool operators, and it's one of the most decentralized networks in the entire cryptocurrency space. And a lot of these stake pools go beyond just a profitable business. What they do is they have mission-oriented pools. So we see a lot of people who are feeding homeless or kids, or doing clean drinking water, or providing electrification for people who don't have it in Africa. So it's really amazing to see that diversity of commercialization meets mission orientation. And almost all of them are small business owners, so there's thousands of small businesses that have been put in business by Cardano for the business of running the network. And it's truly amazing to see how that's happened, and to do it in a very green way as well. So these stake pool operators, the amount of energy consumption per stake pool is usually less than what it takes to run your Tesla car, or a small house or something like that. And in aggregate, the power of this hotel that we're in is probably the whole Cardano network. Yeah. Contrast that with the proof of work world, where it's the energy of a nation state. So it's really amazing to see what science has been able to do, and good protocol design. It brings people together, it creates economic opportunities, it gets more decentralized over time, and it's environmentally friendly. That's a winner for me.
In terms of the network, a question that I had for you is, right now it's in megabytes, the total amount of space on the network. Do you think that ever has to change to go to a higher level? Like what when the Cardano network is in full capacity, what kind of energy do you think it's going to take?
Okay, well, we're talking about storage versus energy. So first, with respect to storage, you have a situation where if you have a system that continues to grow, eventually you're going to have not just megabytes and gigabytes, but terabytes and exabytes and yottabytes. And
yottabytes?
Yeah, yotta is like as big as it gets.
Oh my gosh, wow.
Like the NSA storage facility in Bluffdale, Utah is about 4 yottabytes. It's just massive amounts of data. You need a 50 megawatt power plant to run that data center. It's crazy. So that'll eventually happen if you're archiving everything and you want to preserve this concept of inclusive accountability and auditability and so forth. So one of the most important areas of research in the cryptocurrency space is the zero knowledge research lines, because there it gives you your cake and you get to eat it too. So people are talking about saying, well, I want to have a light client, but I want to have a full node security. In other words, if you send me a transaction, I'm interacting with a smart contract, I'm doing something, you're able to verify that the things you look at are correct. Great. So that's one dimension of it. The other dimension is what are the operating parameters of the system? In other words, to do all of this stuff, how much energy is consumed? So we tend to think of energy strictly as a consensus business, but you're very apt to link energy to storage because it's also a situation of, well, you have to all these hard disks and all these other things. So if you have talk about a yottabyte of scale, the NSA is burning 50 megawatts for their facility. So you'd be basically a power plant to store all this stuff, and that's just in a distributed sense. If it's replicated, it'll be even more. So there are some interesting questions about how do you amortize that and how do you incentivize that. And we published a paper not too long ago called Minotaur. And this is part of the future Ouroboros agenda for Ouroboros Omega. But Minotaur is basically a multi-resource consensus model. So we tend to think of, well, proof of work versus proof of stake versus proof of storage versus proof of history. Well, what if you could just do all of them in one network? So one cryptocurrency has multiple consensus algorithms, and they're weighted against each other in some way. And then as a result, you're incentivizing now the development of different resources that the network can use. So some of those are, the proof of stake is really good about decision making. It's really good about voting. It's really good about delegation of authority. Proof of work is really good about aggregating large amounts of computation. Well, proof of storage be really good about creating a network of storage places to put things. Well, if you had a master algorithm, in this case Minotaur, it would be able to do all of those things. And it's something that we've been exploring for the future Cardano agenda. So what happens post-Voltaire when you look at those things? So the next 5 years, because we looked at 2015 to 2020 for that horizon. And so we say, well, okay, 2025, 2027, this horizon, where do we go from there? And there's
the Cardano roadmap grows.
Exactly. And the point is that you want to be ever in solving not just problems that are today, but problems that are going to come 5 years or 10 years as a consequence of success. Ethereum ran into this, where okay, what happens if Ethereum gets adopted? Well, Ethereum gets adopted. So you have high gas fees and all these other problems. And they're like, boy, we should really solve that. So all these things came, some from the community like Polygon and rollups and these things, and others from Vitalik like Casper. But the problem is that the lead time was very, very long. So one of the things we tried to do was front load a lot of architecture and protocol design so that we're able to solve these problems faster as an ecosystem. So when you look at Ouroboros, for example, it's quite easy to imagine multi-resource consensus with an Ouroboros model. It's not a mammoth departure from the fundamental design of what we've done, so we can bring that to market much faster. When you look at zero-knowledge proofs and these things, it's much easier to do that with an extended UTXO model, the accounting model of Cardano and Plutus, than it would be with an account-style model. There's less to prove. The circuits are much simpler and these types of things. So that's kind of the great beauty and elegance of Cardano's design was there's a lot of future-proofing that's sitting inside of that, and that translates to better, faster, cheaper, and that translates to more responsible protocol design that ultimately doesn't burn out the environment or doesn't cause existential concerns long term. The Cardano community is huge. Like we had a community event here right before the consensus, and 1,200 plus people showed up for it, which is just extraordinary. And some people flew as far from Singapore and Australia. I can't imagine sitting on a mask, playing with a mask on for 15 hours and coach. That's nuts. That's nuts. But they did. And they did just to be here and show support and to tell the world that it's a real movement. And there's millions of people in it now. Over 1,000 dApps are under construction. There's 5 million assets have been issued. If you look at for example, the NFT volume, about 40% of those 1,000 apps are NFT related. There's $270 million a month of transaction volume on NFTs in Cardano. We're like number 3. I didn't even know that until like a few weeks ago. They said, oh, by the way, and it's like, wow, I knew we had NFTs, but I had no idea that we had gotten that much progress. So the community is very passionate about these things. And what's so cool about it is they like working together and collaborating. Like I got a demo the other day from a dApp being built on Cardano called Cornucopias. And they're building a metaverse for Cardano. And I asked the origin stories. I said, how'd you guys all meet each other? And they said, well, one of them was in an early Catalyst fund, and another one was doing something else. And they saw me on a video say, hey, we need that. So they cold called each other, and they got together. And now we're like 40 people in their company. They've raised $10 million, and they're building this big metaverse. And it's just serendipity of that. Well, there's hundreds of stories like that where people spontaneously are popping up, working together and creating things. And every reasonable metric you can track is very strong in the Cardano community. And every time we've asked the community to do something like the incentivized testnet or the Plutus Pioneer program or dApp development, they've exceeded expectations. They've done some